Hi, everybody. It's Michael Dunaway. I'm the film editor for Paste Magazine. I'm here with my two bosses, my publisher, Nick Purdy, and my editor-in-chief, Josh Jackson. And it's been a great 3 days at the Sennheiser Plus Paste Interactive Studio and Lounge. We've had some wonderful interviews, geeking out with Edward James Olmos about Battlestar Galactica and with Carlton Cuse about Lost, and talking to Brie Larson and all kinds of
Don't
other
forget
great
LeVar
actors.
Burton.
LeVar Burton, the great LeVar Burton, who's
LeVar
maybe
Burton.
still in the house. But I have to say that of all the people we have talked to the entire 3 days, I am most excited about speaking to our next guest, the great AishaTyler.
Oh my God! Hi guys.
Thanks so much for coming in
Thanks
to
for
talk
having
to
me.
us.
I'll show up at a bar for any reason. Clearly.
Free beer on camera, people paying
Yes.
attention to you.
And this is breakfast.
Yes.
What
are you drinking there?
You know, I don't know.
What are we
Somebody
drinking
came
there?
in and was
I think
like,
it's
this smells boozy. This could be a dip cup for all I know. I have no idea what this is at all.
Is that the Alaskan Black IPA?
It's an IPA,
It is
right?
the Alaskan
yeah, that
Black
seems
IPA.
good. Yes.
Alaskan Black
I asked
IPA,
for an
good.
IPA, and they mentioned two I'd already had, so I asked
you're
for the
a beer
one I
gal
hadn't
too,
had.
huh? Like
I do love a nice beer. Yes, I do. I don't like a not nice beer though. Fucking not nice
beers.
beer. Rude beers. Fuck that beer. Yeah, but I do. I
Life is
like
too
nice
short
beer.
for
Can you
bad beer.
explain the
True.
goofiness of why there's three of us interviewing one person?
It's nice,
please?
and you're
I will
also
explain.
cozy over there too.
We are.
This is
Sweet, I like, and I guilted you onto the couch.
Well, the real reason is that there were several guests that any two of us were not willing to give up.
We're fighting over some guests.
Exactly. And Aisha is actually the first one that all three of us couldn't imagine
Aw,
not
I feel special.
Plus, I think they were a little afraid that if I was interviewing solo, it would be 15 minutes of me just staring at you. Such is my fandom.
You lack self-control.
That is true. That is
Speaking
true.
of, let's move on.
Yes, let's move on. So, since we're talking about the beers, why don't
Mm-hmm.
why don't you tell us what kinds of beers you tend to like, and we'll geek out with Nick a little bit on the beer side.
Well, I think my favorite beer style is the IPA. I like bitter things generally. I like my beers like I like my women black and bitter, and so I like probably my favorite beer if I was pressed against the wall. Anchor makes a beautiful IPA. It's like. So I think it's like triple hopped and like beautifully dry hopped at the end. It's really floral, and that's my favorite beer probably.
Liberty Ale.
Liberty.
And
Anchor
you know
Liberty.
we're doing this thing right now where we are tasting 64 American IPAs and doing a March Madness style bracket.
Blind test.
Well, how far has Liberty gone?
Well, Liberty, they were in it, and we haven't revealed anything yet.
Okay.
But I will tell you what we learned about Liberty, and you, I'm sure, know this. It was the original American IPA.
I believe that. I believe
Doesn't even
that.
say IPA on the label because we weren't calling them that
At that time, yeah.
But-
I mean, stylistically, maybe it departs a little bit from traditional
A bit
IPA.
more spicy.
Yeah, a little spicier, a little more floral. But I love that beer. I talk to it when I drink. Oh, there she is. And then I just like craft beers generally. I grew up in San Francisco. It's obviously a really strong craft beer culture there. And I think the first microbrewery to start back up after you could start microbreweries was in Anderson. I think it might have been Anderson Valley Brewing Company. So I honeymooned up there, drank a lot of beer on my honeymoon. I like a nice beer. Yeah.
So, just to transition away from beer, you've
Why?
written a book.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure there was lots of beer consumed in the writing of the book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is my second book. It's called Self-Inflicted Wounds. And for people who know my podcast, there's a segment at the end of every show where the guest tells an extraordinarily humiliating story about themselves, like punishingly embarrassing. The inaugural story was from H. John Benjamin, who's my co-star on Archer, and it was a story about getting food poisoning on a plane and then deciding that he was ninja enough to drive from LAX to Pasadena, which is a very long drive. It went very poorly for him, very, very poorly. And the punchline to the story is I didn't just shit my pants, I shit my car. So that was the bar that was set to which all others must live up. And so because I have people come on and humiliate themselves every week on my show, I thought it would be appropriate for me to do the same. So the book is a collection of a lifetime of self-inflicted wounds from the time I was about 5 years old until, apparently right now. So, but I think that the essence of the book, other than kind of like just a collection of treats of Schadenfreude, is to show, the book is really about how failure generates success. You know, you always hear people say, I didn't do that because I was worried I was going to fail. And that has never been a reason for me not trying something. I usually go in thinking this is probably going to go terribly and I'm pretty much going to get injured, but that was never a reason to stop me before, and it's not a reason to stop now. And I think, you know, a lot of people at Wired did a whole issue on failure and how most successes come out of failure. And also for comedians killing is not what makes you funny. Bombing is what makes you funny. Because when you bomb, it makes you fearless. It makes you know that you can bomb and not die. And usually when you bomb, you walk off stage, and after you wake up from your binge drinking, you think, maybe I should rewrite some jokes. So it's really about kind of like failure as a tool for success, and also about how I almost set myself on fire. So there's that too. Yeah.
There's that great line from Deadwood where Swearingen explains how to deal with failure and to stand it like a man and then give some back. You know?
Yeah, embrace it.
Yeah.
Give it a little reach around.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised at what failure would do. Well, you'll be surprised at what anyone will do with you if you do a reach around. I mean, pretty much a reach around is a way to close a deal in any situation.
So moving on very quickly from that, you mentioned the. If I'm not red enough now.
You're totally red.
Rally.
You mentioned the
I win!
As if there was going to be a question.
Kamal Bell couldn't make me stop. You can't make me stop either. I promise. W. Kamal Bell. Excuse me. You mentioned the podcast, which is absolutely one of my absolute favorite podcasts of all time. It's brilliant. It's called Girl and Guy for everybody out there.
Because I don't care why you come to the show. I just care that you come.
There you
Whatever.
go.
I don't care what you think you're going to get. You know, some people also don't go to girlandguy.com. Different website. so I'm the .net of
What's
the
your
two.
podcast about?
Well, originally it was my backstory is I was raised by a single dad, so I kind of always was around guy stuff. I grew up on the back of a motorcycle. I started playing video games when I was, pretty much if you're a single dad, daycare is like give your daughter $20 in quarters and be like, don't talk to strangers. Daddy's got a date. So I grew up playing, arcade games, and I've always been a gamer. And I wanted to do a show that was about stuff that I loved, that tended to be stuff that was more kind of guy-friendly than female-friendly. And so it was a show about stuff that guys love, brought to you by a guy's girl. That was kind of the premise of the show. But it's evolved a little bit to be more about kind of art and trial, and how you see these people that you admire, and it seems like their lives are charmed and they've had some kind of magic luck. And when you sit down and talk with any interesting artist or athlete or writer, what you find out is they've had a lot of personal challenges and a lot of failures that got them to where they are now. Yeah. So the show is really just talking with them, like, how did you get to be the world's best all-around snowboarder? How did you get to be a columnist for Spin? How did you get to be a nighttime television host? And what you find is that people have really interesting stories. They've gone through a lot. They've failed a lot. They had 100 breaks that were not the break, and then we curse a lot, which I really like. I love the internet so much. I sometimes curse just to see how many times I can curse. Just fuck. Hi, Mom.
The part of what makes your podcast so compelling, and it's interesting, we had Marin on 2 days ago, and he was a great podcast. It's something the two of y'all have in common, is that you really bring a lot of personal. You really open yourself up on your podcast. It's one thing to be Larry King and to do a great interview show or Dan Patrick, where you do a great interview show that is really all about the other person. Right. And you would think that would be the more interesting thing. But actually what's way more interesting to me is when somebody really brings a lot of themselves to the table and opens themselves up and has a conversation. Tell me about getting comfortable with the idea of that.
Well, the thing is that I'm fascinated with me, and so no, that's not it at all.
So is Mark.
And so is he. Fascinated with me? Awesome.
Both.
I'm fascinating. No, you know what it is? I wanted to give my listeners a singular experience with someone that they admire, and I feel like I've been on the other side of interviews a million times where it's pre-digested and pre-produced. You've got 7 minutes. Remember the story you told me on the phone? Tell it again like this, but drop that out, and you've got a punchline. Here comes a commercial. You never really get to know a person that way. So I always feel like the way to get someone to open up is to be open with them. And they make them feel comfortable, make them feel like it's a safe space. Yep. And once they feel like they can't embarrass themselves and like you're there for them and you're not going to let them swing, they usually open up. And also the show it's very specific context. I'm sure a lot of other people podcast this way. No publicists, nobody in the room, just me and them. And people always say, well, do you want to turn this into a television show? People say things on a microphone that they won't say with lights and a camera. I clearly will say whatever the fuck anywhere, but most people are more inhibited when there are cameras on them. So I want the show to be a conversation, not an interview. Yeah. And what I feel really grateful for, and I'm sure Mark's probably said this too, is every single episode someone says, I've never told this story before, I've never said this to anybody before, I've never told this in public before.
There definitely seems to be something in common about how y'all
think
about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody likes to talk about themselves, which is why podcasting is so alluring. But I think also people have a path that they've gone through and they've struggled and they've really put a lot of their blood and their energy and their sweat into what they do. And that's not a 3-minute fucking story on a late night show. That's a long story to tell. And I feel like the more I can be like, hey, I've been through it too, and I can relate. And Kamal Belt was just on my show, and his self-inflicted wound was that he said that he has a porn addiction. Wow. And he said, this is a big deal, and this is true, this is not a joke, and I feel like I need to say it out loud and make it real. That's the way for me to start to deal with it. And, I could have reacted 100 different ways, and I said, I just want you to feel really safe right now. I don't want you to feel like you made a mistake saying that out loud. And then we talked about it for, like 20, 25 minutes, and I feel like I want the show to feel like a totally safe place, and I cultivate that relationship with my guests, and I make sure that I cultivate that kind of a listenership. That the show is important to me, and the show is important to my listeners. And I just did a Q&A show at New Year's Eve day was all Q&A. People could write in, and then I would answer their questions. So it was just me talking for an hour and a half. It was delightful. And it was. A lot of people were like, "What's it like to kiss Joey and Ross?" But a lot of a guy wrote in and he said, I lost my mom to cancer last year, and the way we spent her last 6 months was listening to your show together. That's not what I set out to do. I wanted to make a stupid little internet show. Yeah. And the fact that that's the way that people consume my show is so gratifying and so humbling, and also makes me hyperventilate a little bit because I'm like, fuck, I gotta take this more seriously. Oh, God. But, it's an intimate format. People listen to you in their car or in the gym or alone in the dark under the covers, wet and naked and crying. And that's a special kind of responsibility. I take it pretty seriously. Not totally seriously, but pretty seriously.
So what is it like to kiss Joey and Ross? No, I'm just
It's
kidding.
awesome.
No, just
it's
kidding.
awesome. They taste like money, both of them. Let me tell you.
Can I one more little follow-up to
Go.
that? Is it hard? I'm curious if it's hard for you in here to go there because you are so quick, you're so funny, you're so smart, Dartmouth girl.
You're so nice.
Okay.
Thank you. What a waste of money.
And is it hard to? I know once Kamal starts talking about that, for instance, you say you could go 100 different directions. You probably had 8 different punchlines going through.
Yeah.
Is it hard to turn that mind off and say, no, I'm going to be present for my friend right now?
Yes, because I'm not a dick. And also because when you have my podcast, it typically runs 90 minutes, but pretty much the show is what it is. If it goes 45 minutes, it's 45 minutes. If it goes 2 hours, it's 2 hours. I don't edit the show, and as Bill Burr would say, I talk into the mic for an hour, and whatever that gets me. So whatever it gets me is what it gets me. And because of that, I don't care about how many laughs I got in that 90 minutes. I don't care if the show's funny. A lot of times I'll finish a show and I'm like, God, that show wasn't that funny. And I'll listen back and there's always a lot of funny moments in the show. The show that's posting this week is with Maria Bamford, who's a genius, and I've known for a very long time. And we end up talking for 90 minutes about mental illness. And it's really, really fucking funny. Man, crazy people are hilarious, by the way. And talking about her own mental illnesses and her struggle with mental illness, and she was a really little kid. And I feel like, when you hear somebody be that open with you, you can't throw a punchline back. You have to be there for them. We did throw a lot of punchlines around, though. We made fun of crazy people for a long time. Yeah. Luckily, I had a crazy person in the room, so I have permission. That's the thing. So when I'm here, if you want to make fun of black people, you guys have 1 minute.
All this openness gets me where
Makes
I
you
want to ask you
uncomfortable?
about. No, a little. I want to ask you about stand-up and how that relates to playing Lana Kane on Archer. So,
Okay.
In your stand-up, you have to let go. You have to give yourself to the audience. You have to be all in, or it will not fly.
Right.
Archer's a scripted show. On the other hand, when I describe the show to people that don't know it and explain why they ought to watch it, I'm like, well, the two main characters never say a thing to each other. They're not yelling at each other. Like, the show is in all caps all the time, right?
Yes.
Lana and Archer do not talk to each other.
Point.
They only yell.
Totally.
But I was wondering if there's something about, even though it's scripted, I'm guessing you just have to be, unhinged to deliver those lines. Is it like doing your stand-up where it's live in an audience and you have to just be unchained?
There's a really specific math, at least to the way that I do our show, and I think that animation's very, very different from live performance because you have 1,000 runs at the same thing to get it right. So I can't tell you what the other guys do for the show because we all record it separately. We're never together. But I have a line, and I just say it every single way I can possibly think of that might be funny until I hear, I'm in a booth in LA. The guys who create the show live in Atlanta. I can hear them through my headset. They're on T1 line. They're not listening to me at all. They're masturbating. But then if I make them laugh, if I make them stop masturbating for a few seconds, then I know I got the line right.
You got it.
So so it's just, I listen and I just try to be, luckily I'm doing comedy long enough that I feel like I have some ideas and I bring them in and then I just run at that line over and over again, and when they crack up, I move on. Everybody, I'm sure some people do it where they read it like a scene. I think Jessica might have a much more like arty process where she tries to actually be an actor. But I just go nuts. I go nuts. I jump around. There's a lot of jumping and waving your arms around and going bananas. Yeah, I love making that show so much. I don't even know how to express it in words. It's like this little show that I never thought would get on the air. I used the word ball slappiest in the pilot. I was sure that was never going to be a show that got on the air. And every time it gets picked up, I feel like my baby is walking.
Do you guys have any chances to gather?
We see each other usually, well, now we're on tour. Now we're touring, like Archer Live. So we did 3 dates in January, and then we're going to do 3 dates in April. But we usually see each other twice a year, which is at Comic-Con, and then at TCA, which is the Television Critics Association thing. And that's usually just John and me and Adam. And then at Comic-Con, we'll all be together. Oh, and then this Upfronts thing where we sell ads and stuff like that. But yeah, it's rare. And Archer Live has been amazing because we really like each other so much, and we never interact as actors.
Right.
So we do scenes from the show and mainly just please ourselves and kind of ignore the audience altogether, which they seem to like. They really like being abused. Yeah, John.
Last question on that. How much do you feel like you have in common with Lana?
I wish I was like Lana. I love her so much. I definitely don't have her boobs. She's gonna suffocate under the weight of those. I just want to point out, like a horse that broke a leg, just organs crushing, lungs.
Or her hands.
Or her hand. What are her hands? See her hands? They're delicate. Her hands are delicate and feminine. I like how kind of cocksure she is, and I think, but she's a mess. She's an emotional mess. She doesn't know what she wants. She's kind of overdriven by work and type A. I definitely have that in common with her. Kind of like she's just obsessed with work. She could use a pair of pants.
Often.
I love pants. I think Lana could probably express some affection for pants. It'd be good. It's got to be drafty doing all that spy work with a miniskirt on.
Right.
I really, really like her, and I love playing her. And this season, she's going through some personal stuff that I think is really interesting. So, Lana's life is about to change. Because she's a man, baby. I don't know what's happening. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Very last question, we'll let you go. We're here at the Sennheiser Lounge. You deal with voiceover, you deal with podcasting,
yes.
You deal with a lot of audio things. Tell me about getting sound right. Tell me about.
So it's interesting. Like when I decided to do this podcast, I kind of went. I wanted a setup that was going to be straightforward and easy and portable, and sound as good as it could sound and fit into a very small space. So sound quality is very important to me, but I will admit that I compromise, I would say, about 10% on sound quality in favor of flexibility. In other parts of my life, not at all. I'm a filmmaker. Why are you laughing? No, I am a filmmaker. And I've made 4 short films, and I've used Sennheiser mics on all of them. And I'm my own operator. I operate and I shoot and I cut and I deliver and I do everything because I don't like people or interacting with people. So, this is not an endorsement. I just always use Sennheiser shotguns when I shoot, because most of the time I'm doing music. I do a lot of music videos, and so obviously sound matters more when you're dealing with music than it does when you're dealing with the spoken word. Not that it's not as important, but people are willing to forgive a little bit of a sound, kind of a lower level of sound quality when you're just hearing 2 people talk. But it is really important to me because it affects the way people enjoy your product. If they're distracted by, say, noises coming from behind the bar right now, then that might affect their enjoyment of this superlative interview that we've just conducted. So obviously sound quality is really important.
The bar will not come through. These mics are brilliant.
Look at them, right? This mic is only picking up just like
my toes.
Yes, your toes wiggling inside your boot, right? It's beautiful. My mics are not this nice. Dear Sennheiser.
All right, well, I think that will do it for us. The great AishaTyler, the legend. No. If you want to get more of AishaTyler, we've got book coming out when?
July 9th.
Title?
It's called Self-Inflicted Wounds, out from HarperCollins, and podcast every week, Girl on Guy. Go to girlonguy.net, not girlonguy.com, not safe for work. You can watch me every day on The Talk on CBS. You can watch me on Whose Line Is It Anyway? The reboot starts this summer. I'm taking over for Drew Carey. I'm going to try not to suck.
Reboot of Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Reboot of Whose Line. You can watch me on Archer every week as Lana Kane.
And if you're in Austin,
you can see me at the Interactive Awards tonight. I'm going to be hosting. And I'm going to do something super arty. I've decided to make some art tonight. It'll either be super funny or it'll be super funny for reasons that I don't intend. So either way, it's going to be great.
Well, I really, honestly do not know any better way to wrap up our 3 days of being at the
Thanks
Sennheiser.
for having me, you guys. This was wonderful.
Thanks for coming.
Thank
Great.
you. I enjoyed it so much.
So wrapping us up, this is Michael Dunaway, Nick Purdy, Josh Jackson, all with Paste Magazine at the Sennheiser plus Paste Interactive Studio and Lounge South by Southwest 2013 with the legend herself, AishaTyler. Thanks, guys. The people's champ.
That was fun, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for doing that.
Awesome.